Welcome to Good Game, I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex.
This week on the show, we review a game which looks at the repercussions of what might happen if the Chinese economy collapsed.
Well, I mean, that's not the game's only selling point.
Nah, it's about tanks and stuff.
Yeah.
Exo-soldier squad in position, sir.
Plus, we check for signs of life in space.
While we're in space, it's also a race against time with a new point and click.
Receiving the genetic info. This is good, John.
Wait. I can hear something.
And Goose borrows his dad's suit and pays homage to an 80s icon.
The most 80s art form imaginable.
But before all that, can you name the tech demo for this week?
Ooh. Laserlife is a rather abstract rhythm game from the makers of the Bit Trip games.
It's basically 2 hours of this. Which I think is fair to say probably will not be for everyone, but there is a story threaded through it as well. It's about a dead astronaut that some advanced alien life has discovered. And for some reason, these beings use the power of dull trance music to reconstruct his memories.
You guide 2 lines through each level using 1 thumbstick for each. And there are 3 main memories, each with 4 levels to work through. Every level consists of several phases. The first phase has you guide your lines into molecules and hit the triggers to pick them up.
This phase makes up most of the game, but it's just not a very good rhythm game mechanic. Picking up the molecules doesn't have any impact on the soundtrack, and at times they don't even seem to be related to the music. Worst of all, the levels in each memory simply reuse the same backgrounds and music for the whole phase. All they do is move the molecules a bit. It just feels a bit lazy. This is a rhythm game, give me some fresh beats.
Yeah, and it's unusual for these devs, isn't it? Usually every mechanic they introduce is about adding a new layer to that cool soundtrack that you're creating. That said, I do think you can still enjoy this by letting yourself just be absorbed into it. And, you know, I think the way it makes you split your brain and your thumbs between controlling the 2 lines definitely forced me into quite a deep focus.
I know what you're saying, it's just a bit tedious doing the same level 4 times in a row. I did enjoy the second phase of each level more though. In these, you just have to guide your lines through hoops, but they'd always kick in with a new song, and each had an original and interesting background. Plus they arranged the hoops much more in time with the music, so it was way more satisfying to hit them.
Yeah, those were definitely the best moments. It's just a shame the first phase seemed to always go on about 3 times as long as those bits.
Yeah, and then the next 2 phases aren't great either. You just dodge some red bits for a while. And finally, you waggle the sticks a bunch to get light to go into the astronaut. You do those 4 phases over 12 levels, and that's the whole game.
Yeah, you have to admit the whole alien memory recovery premise is a pretty cool idea though, isn't it?
It is, but they didn't really give me a sense of who this astronaut was or why I should care about them. They had a dog, got married and went to space. Those glimpses just weren't enough to tell me an interesting story. I just didn't like this game very much, and I think the scoring system is broken too.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, to get a good score, you have to get over half your points from the waggling section at the end. I don't like waggling. As long as you build up a good multiplayer in phase 2 and dodge the red bits in phase 3, you'll get loads of points from just waggling those sticks. I was just so disappointed with this. It needed more interesting music, more interesting mechanics, and those visuals, it all just felt a little bit undercooked, so I'm giving it 1 star.
Well, I didn't love it either, but I thought there were some pretty good visuals and some okay beats, so I'm giving it 2. You know, I think Goose has got some news for us.
Does he now?
Yeah.
Here's what's making headlines. Activision has revealed that the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions of Call of Duty Black Ops 3 will not contain a single-player campaign. Those versions will only contain the game's multiplayer and zombies modes, as Activision say the 4-player co-op nature of the campaign is too ambitious for the older hardware. To compensate for the dropped campaign, those versions will be slightly cheaper and come with a download code for the original Black Ops. Homoerotic showering simulator Rinse and Repeat has become the 12th game to ever be banned from broadcast on game streaming service Twitch. The game, which tasked players with scrubbing a naked man's back in a public shower, violated Twitch's rules, which state nudity can't be a core focus or feature of the game in question.
Hey, I need some love on my back.
The game's developer, Robert Yang, lashed out at the rule, saying such a blanket ban discourages artistic experimentation. He also cited Vimeo and YouTube's policies as being more progressive as they allowed for nudity and sexuality if it serves an artistic purpose. This is Yang's second game to be banned on Twitch, joining his dick pic simulator, Cobra Club. Electronic Arts has announced that SimCity developer Maxis will be merging with their mobile games division. In March this year, EA shut down the main Maxis studio at Maxis Emeryville, but now the remaining Maxis group is being combined with EA's mobile teams in order to reach more players on mobile and PC. EA has said this change does not mean Maxis will be shifting focus away from PC development. As part of the organisational shake-up, Maxis' senior vice president Lucy Bradshaw has left the company, with The Sims studio head Rachel Franklin set to take on the role. And that's all for this week.
Thanks, Goose. It's the future. Imagine planning a trip with your family. You climb into your cryo-sleep pods and prepare to snooze your way through the journey so that you can arrive at your destination in what feels like the blink of an eye. Or so you thought.
Dream of us and you will see monsters can't harm you or me.
Is anyone there?
Close your eyes again. A new day will surely be upon you and me.
Stasis is a point-and-click sci-fi adventure. First of all, I loved the very opening cinematic credit sequence. It really set the mood, didn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the art and design of this game. The first thing you'll notice is the isometric view, which isn't all that common for this genre, but I think it works quite well.
Yeah, I think so too. You play as John Marachek. After stumbling out of stasis and making your way to the medical bay to put yourself back together, you do your best to try and figure out what has gone wrong.
Straight away, there is a seriously eerie vibe. The ship's robotic AI voices are terrifying.
Increased heart rate detected. Automated medical care systems are non-functional. Please seek medical attention.
And even then, the thought of getting myself patched up didn't seem too appealing when I saw that robot surgery arm. Prometheus, anyone?
Being a point-and-click puzzler, you'll have to do your fair share of mouse hovering and random clicking to find solutions. For me, I think the interface was a little clunky, and it took a while to get the hang of it.
I don't think that'll work.
Yeah, initially I struggled even just finding the exits.
Yeah. The actual doorways are obvious, but some areas of the screen just fade to black. But those are sometimes exits too.
Well, maybe they just wanted to create that sense of post-stasis disorientation. My biggest issue with this was the pathfinding. What's going on there? It's all over the shop.
It's pretty bad, but I think a lot of the slightly rough design can be forgiven, because it does such a great job of setting up what is a pretty good horror game. There are some grotesque scenes here. The story deals with freakish science experiments gone wrong, some of which are still lurking.
Yet, not to mention, getting a puzzle wrong in this game doesn't just mean frustration, but often brutal death.
Atmosphere compromised. Death is imminent.
I did have a bit of a laugh at the gore there, though.
Yeah, it's over the top, but in a silly way. Puzzles are solved traditionally by finding items and combining them to help you get your power running, doors unlocked, or enable you to electrocute a vat of writhing mutant clones so you can safely cross. Just for example. Pretty standard stuff.
I found the puzzles generally provided a good challenge, but occasionally I get stumped for ages on something really simple, like I didn't have the right item or I just wasn't looking in the right area. And this frustrated me a lot. I mean, I don't necessarily think this game needs a hint system as such, but maybe a few more vocal cues from John to point me in the right direction. And give me something, dude.
Yeah, definitely. You end up doing a fair bit of back and forth just trying to figure out what you're missing.
Yeah, I mean, in most areas you can run, but there was one point where I needed to do a whole lot of backtracking for an item that I realised I needed. And it meant slowly wading through long corridors of water, and it was painfully slow.
For me, it was all that time travelling in elevators, which made the backtracking so much slower.
Medical wing is on that tram line, so it should be a quick ride.
Thank you, Tia. And, I'm sorry about your friend.
Yeah, I think that might have been to cover loading, and I do think they've tackled that rather well in general. It's not exactly a graphically impressive game, and there aren't any settings to improve that, but there are some specky cutscenes thrown in to link the more significant moments, which is nice.
Similar to last week's Soma, this is a sci-fi thriller that really shines through its story, if you can stomach it. It gets pretty disturbing towards the end.
Yeah, it is nightmare-inducing stuff. Most of the initial story is delivered through the journal and log entries of former crew members, which do also provide some clues to help you with the puzzles. But yeah, there are a couple of scenes in there that are seriously messed up.
Oh god.
Final thoughts, Hex?
Well, I really enjoyed the premise, and it sets that space horror scene so well with its environments and wonderful sound design. But the mechanics are a little bit too rough for me, and I nearly rage quit on some of those puzzles for silly reasons that could have been fixed. So I'm giving it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I was frustrated at times, but I was determined to see this through, and I'm glad I did. There's also talk of this coming to mobile devices, and I think it would be perfect for that. I'm giving it 3 stars.
Just 1 second.
Hex Gaming has celebrated some pretty incredible anniversaries this year, such as the 30th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. And the 20th of PlayStation.
Yeah, those are some pretty big birthdays, but there is another name in the history of tech and gaming that celebrated its 30th this year, one that's slightly less celebrated.
Back in the 80s, no home computer manufacturer stood taller than Commodore. Released in 1982, the Commodore 64 was accessible, it was affordable, and to this day remains the highest selling home computer of all time. But it was the Commodore 64's successor that was far more influential. In terms of graphics, audio, and raw potential, this was a quantum leap. This machine would change the face of gaming. This is the story of the Amiga. The Amiga 1000 shipped back in 1985, exactly 30 years ago. And while it only shipped with 256K of RAM, it possessed with it a suite of dazzling new features.
A slick graphical user interface, a preemptive multitasking operating system. Previously, a home computer could only do one thing at a time. Now you could have several windows open at once. The Amiga supported 4-channel sound and graphics capable of displaying up to 4,096 colours at the same time.
I am your total home video and music studio. I am sight and sound.
The secret to this incredible power? A custom chipset.
Working hand in hand with the Motorola 68000 CPU was a video processor, Denise, an audio processor, Paula, and Agnes, the Blitter chip that controlled access to the RAM. With these powers combined, the Amiga was more than the sum of its parts.
Keep in mind, this was a good decade before graphics accelerator cards became popular in Windows PCs.
One of the strongest examples of the Amiga's early potential was Cinemaware's Defender of the Crown, released in 1986. This sprawling medieval adventure full of siegecraft and swordplay shone brightest on the Amiga as competing systems struggled to look and even sound half as good. From then on, more and more games would utilise the Amiga's power to champion their games. Titles like Cannon Fodder, Shadow of the Beast, Frontier Elite 2, and Sensible World of Soccer.
The age of the simple arcade port and text adventure was over. The multimedia era had begun.
Long before today's culture of indie game designer celebrities, the Amiga fostered a host of auteurs. The Bitmap brothers, Sensible Software, Mike Singleton, Peter Molyneux, and Jeff Minter. In '87, Commodore released 2 new models at either end of the price spectrum. The cheaper Amiga 500, which eventually outsold its competitor, the Atari ST, and the high-performance and very pricey Amiga 2000, which focused on video production and is responsible for pioneering early 90s video graphics that have not aged well. Both included a whopping 1 megabyte of RAM that, while laughable today, allowed for developers to create new and exciting forms of software that would go on to make waves throughout digital history.
The Amiga fostered the dawn of the shareware movement, a precursor, some might say, to the crowdfunding of today.
But not only were the games the Amiga made possible sights to behold, the system itself was Promethean. Anything you could witness on the Amiga, you could create for yourself. The Amiga brought forth previously inconceivable worlds of vivid colour. Yet it had a darker side too. There was the terrifying new threat of computer viruses, and a digital underground of shady cabals, hackers and crackers. In the 80s, a bitter arms race was fought between the games publishers and the pirates, and the pirates won. Every new form of copy protection was thwarted, sometimes within days of a game's launch, sometimes within hours. The crackers would distribute their ill-gotten wares on bulletin boards by floppy disk. They would code elaborate intros to their bootlegs. Through bouncing text and synth samples, they fired off shoutouts and flames.
This ignited another arms race, as the cracker groups attempted to outclass each other, pushing the Amiga's hardware beyond its limits.
Some of these intros outshone the games they were attached to, and before long they jettisoned the need for games entirely. The demo scene was born.
More than just a fad, this was the birth of a multimedia art form, the most 80s art form imaginable.
The Amiga was so far ahead of its competition, it was as though it existed in a parallel universe. At the very same time that America was gripped with the Nintendo Entertainment System, there was some serious love down under for the humble home computer system.
I don't know. What's it called?
Commodore Amiga. Brilliant stuff from under $1,000.
Excellent.
As the 90s rolled around, and at the height of their popularity, Commodore released the Amiga 3000, a new system with a new iteration of enhanced chipset. And while it faced a slew of criticism in comparison to the successful PC and Mac models of the time, it still contributed to Commodore selling 1 million units in a year, 1/3 of their total sales up until that point. However, over time, the Amiga's abilities were becoming less and less unique. All the things that once made it special had now become ubiquitous. New models came fast and cheap. The Amiga 500 Plus was produced as a cheaper version of the 500 and marketed as a game-focused machine, but was heavily criticised as it was unable to run many popular titles of the time. Development of the Amiga 600 and eventually 1200 still couldn't keep up with the success of IBM, who now dominated the market.
Get smart. Get an IBM PC.
So why did the Amiga die? Well, put simply, in 1994, Commodore went out of business.
The previous Christmas period had been a disaster for Commodore. Sales figures had plummeted, and a failure to stock shelves or even produce a competitive machine that year had led to a total profit loss of $357 million. By May 94, Commodore was forced to file for bankruptcy and subsequently ceased all production on new machines. The once thriving tech company was abandoned. It was the end of an era.
Yes, the Amiga is dead, but its spirit lives on.
A lot of teenage rebels of the Amiga underground ended up hitting the big time. The Swedish demo group The Silence went legit and formed the studio Digital Illusions, better known as DICE. And the shady Finnish scenesters of Future Crew went on to form Remedy Entertainment. So, when looking back at the history of video games, it's a little too easy to dismiss tech now as outdated as the Amiga, but the influence of the format and its pioneers cannot be understated.
Above all, the Amiga was ahead of its time. 30 years ago, it gave us a glimpse into the future, and now, after all these years, it seems the future has finally caught up.
Thanks, Goose. In a future world of military unrest and political turmoil, it's up to you to build an army and save the day. That is, if you can figure out what on earth anyone is talking about.
Has any of the equipment salvaged in Serbia revealed any secrets?
For the most part, some of the components come from Wayland Defense Corps.
WDC. What about the connection to Escobedo or Yao?
Our financial experts have determined that WDC is actually a front organization for the Young Corporation holding.
I know that name. It was in Yao's file. She'd been working for them for some time.
Before turning cyber terrorist and becoming involved in the Shanghai crash.
I love you.
She's our connection.
Where is this holding base?
In China, in a special economic enclave administered directly by multinational companies.
Pete Vermaat, captain, ex-private contractor for Damocles, and dead for 2 months.
You're exactly the man we're looking for.
Act of Aggression is an RTS developed by French studio Eugene Systems.
I'm Olivier.
They brought us the rather good Ruse, The Art of Deception, and wargame Air-Land Battle. Act of Aggression is a successor to their 2005 game Act of War Direct Action. Bajo, we said this in our wargame Air-Land Battle review a few years ago, but these guys need to come up with better names for their games.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I think they're just taking their previous game name and using a thesaurus on it to come up with the next one. And their storylines aren't getting any easier to digest either. Shall we try and decipher it, Hex?
Go for it, Bajo.
Yeah, all right. The year is 2026, I think, and there's a Mexican army, and they're fighting with America, I think. This all follows a financial crisis causing the collapse of China, says Wikipedia, but China and Mexico aren't playable factions. There are 3 playable factions, and they're caught up in a conspiracy.
WDC is actually a front organization.
Some guys called Damocles, and
with PMCs such as Damocles.
And they're all locked in battle. They're all fighting each other, and they're making tanks. And Hex, I'm out. I have no idea why anyone is doing anything.
Oh, my eyes glazed over after the first cutscene, Bajo, despite a fairly flashy presentation style.
The gameplay is delicious, though.
Yeah, it's satisfying. This game runs at a pace and style similar to the old Command & Conquer days, with a rock and roll soundtrack to match. This lengthy campaign will test your strategic skills with unique battlefield problems. You'll be fighting down to your last few units across war-torn cities.
Unit is under attack.
Oh, no,
rescuing important leaders.
The judge is secured.
Taking over towns.
Good job. Engineers are on their way.
And doing your best to adapt to a dynamic and rapidly changing battlefield.
Contacts are converging on your position. Wait for the chopper, then get out of here.
Difficulty ramps up quickly, and early on you'll be taught a few hard lessons about managing an army.
Yeah, it's nice and tough. I found myself restarting more than a few times, sometimes only a few minutes into a game.
Yeah, me too. Often you've only got limited units, and they're structured in a way that if you don't utilize, say, your recon scout helicopters properly or buildings for cover, you'll be destroyed very quickly.
Unit is under attack.
I love this, Hex. It's the way the game teaches you how to play, and it is brutal. But it's also quite refreshing not to have all your strategies laid out for you. You have to think about it yourself, using the tools that you have and come up with a solution.
Building completed.
And I think that's way more interesting than your usual build a base and steamroll over the enemy.
Yeah, this is an RTS for RTS players, that's for sure. And part of the difficulty comes from management of finite resources. If you just go crazy and upgrade every turret, build every building and start pumping out troops, you will probably run out of resources before you have any sort of army worth fighting with.
You'll have to make do with the existing infrastructure. No more.
I mean, there is no safety net. This is war.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the real strategy of this game is knowing what to upgrade, but also what not to upgrade and what not to produce. Upgraded infantry troops that are placed strategically in buildings or behind tougher vehicles are formidable, and they'll destroy any sort of tank or bomber raid. But then you're not as mobile, so you need vehicles or aircraft that can move them around for quick deployment in the changing battlefield. And that can be a fantastic way to play this game.
Another transport mission?
Just dumping all those troops behind enemy lines out of their turret range.
Yes, but mobile troop vehicles are super vulnerable while in transit. I mean, you can lose a whole platoon to a good anti-aircraft defense or a well-placed artillery strike from an enemy.
Unit lost.
Any bandits up there?
Ouch.
Yeah, it's so depressing when that happens. Of course, you don't have to focus on infantry. Build a tank army, you might say. Well, good luck, because they are not cheap, and they build quite slowly. And if you move them out too early and you don't hit your target hard enough, you can lose your whole army, and then it really is game over.
Unit lost.
Oh, Hex, there's just so much juicy strategy and army management to think about. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a new strategy in my head. Oh, I can try that tomorrow. But if you do manage to build a massive army, it's hard not to get swept up in the total domination of a good steamroll. Yes. Yes.
Oh, go, my pretties! Destroy!
The AI isn't stupid either.
Unit is under attack.
It knows what you're up to and will advance on your forces if they're just sitting in the field ready to attack. Turrets can only hold your own base for so long, so you need unit defense too. But often you'll need to pull those troops out of base defense to make up numbers in an offensive. You're encouraged to go all out and do this because battles are quick and breaks between enemy harassment of your own base are pretty short.
Unit is under attack.
I quite liked the escalation of enemy harassment on your own base though. So it's not just a few units here and there every 10 minutes, they get much tougher as the match goes on. And then you add in variables like repair vehicles and healing units. There's an exciting, scrappy rhythm to these battles.
But that all depends on whether you can get to grips with the design of the buildings and units. It takes a long time before you can click on a building and know what it is you're clicking. For me, everything just looked too similar, Bajo.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the biggest barrier for people playing this game, just trying to figure out what exactly does what.
Yeah, and it really dragged the experience down for me because there just isn't time to figure out which is your barracks and which is your power structure.
It's a great looking game though.
On my way.
I liked that when you zoom all the way out, you get this cool tactical view.
What are your orders?
There are also some interesting ideas with taking prisoners of war and rescuing injured troops. And it's good to see an RTS where infantry is really useful, even late in the game. It's just another layer of management that fans of this genre will enjoy, I think, Bajo. I was not able to find a game online, though. It is pretty quiet out there.
Yeah, it is, which is a shame. I managed to find one, but just as I managed to build my very first unit, this happened.
Here we go, guys. Good luck, have fun. What to build? What to build? What's this?
Base is under attack.
No! No! Oh no! And it's over.
Oh, hex! A rain of destruction on my base from advanced units. Classic online RTS. I got wrecked.
Well, there is a lot to learn with this game, which is great, but I'm just not sure it's worth the time to learn all of it. As exciting as the strategy is, overall it just had no soul or identity, Bajo. It's just a bit too generic in its look and storytelling, and I think an RTS needs to be memorable in 2015, so I'm giving it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, but RTS games like this are so few and far between, and I agree it does have its rough parts, but I still think this is worth playing for fans of the genre, because it's kind of raw and fun all at the same time. I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
Base is under attack.
So did you name the tech demo for this week? It was the Boing Ball demo, written late one night in 1984 by R.J. Mikkel and Dale Luck. It was used to show the capabilities of a prototype computer codenamed Lorraine, which was just about to have its premiere at the Winter Computer Electronics Show in January of '84. And its unnamed the tech demo as codename Lorraine was released under its better-known title, the Amiga.
Next week on the show, we have the Uncharted collection, 3 full games of wisecracking Drake goodness.
Mr. Drake, will you tell me what's so special about that ring?
It belongs in my family.
Until next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out. I wish I could put myself into Stasis.
Why?
It'd just be so good. Well, then you could go into Stasis for 5 years, and then all the Star Wars movies would be out.
And you could just binge watch them in one weekend.
Watch more. Plus, at least another 37 Assassin's Creed games.